Well, I'm going to tell a little brief story about how I came to find this story, and then I want to start a conversation with the guys and the teachers, and then we'll open it up to questions. The story of how I found it is interesting to me because I was a journalist at the time, but the team had sent out a press release to over 100 media outlets across the country. Horizonte, Jose Cardenas, had covered it here in Phoenix, but it had gotten no national attention whatsoever. And it had been months. It had been 6 months, in fact, before I called them. They had sent me the press release, and I called them in December. They had won the competition in June. So one question is more of a kind of a broader media question, like why didn't anybody pay attention to this, which is a question we can talk about. But on a more personal level, another way of asking it is, why did I respond? You know? And so to explain why I responded, I want to just tell you a little story about where I was coming from, which is that I never intended to be a journalist. In fact, I had been a data entry clerk and was not in a particularly happy spot in my life, typing numbers into a computer. And I saw a flyer around that time for the U.S. National Arm Wrestling Championship, as we mentioned earlier. And I thought, well, that's more interesting than data entry. So I decided to go check it out just as a spectator. It was in Laughlin, Nevada. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I thought it would be a fun weekend adventure. And I get there. It's at the Avi Hotel Resort and Casino, and it was in a garden shed behind the hotel, and the organizer said, look, it's an open event, you can pay $20 and wrestle. And I thought, well, I just drove all this way, why not? Like, I'll learn something, I'll learn more about it than I would just by watching it. So I paid my $20 and I entered, and it was a double elimination event, so you lose twice and you're out, and guess what? I lost twice. You know, no surprises, right? But I had this amazing experience where I met people who were passionate about something that a lot of us probably wouldn't think twice about. And that had a big impact on me, and I was really enjoying meeting people who were doing things that they were passionate about. We're sitting in the back, and they start the awards ceremony, and I'm not paying attention. And I hear, when they start in the lightweight division, 4th place in the United States,
Joshua Davis.
What? And I get on up here, and I go on up, they gave me a medal, and they say, congratulations, you're 4th out of 4. There are only 3 other contestants in the lightweight division. It turns out that made me an alternate for the U.S. National Arm Wrestling Team. And when numbers 2 and 3 couldn't leave the country because they were on probation, they were forced by their bylaws to invite me to become part of Team USA. And I ended up going to Gdynia, Poland to represent America on Team USA, where I ended up 17th in the world.
Out of 18.
And the 18th guy didn't show up. I have never won a competitive arm wrestling match in my life, so I don't know why you're clapping. But on a personal level, like, that changed my life. That sent me down a completely different track. I had been a data entry clerk, and now I was an internationally ranked arm wrestler. And it was because of that I got my first national magazine story, in Maxim, coincidentally, and led to me becoming a writer at Wired. And so when I got this press release, I think I was maybe more open to the idea of people who were pursuing their passion in situations where nobody else was paying attention. So it does tie back to arm wrestling. So that is in part how the book came to be. But I want to open it up now to some of the guys and the teachers here. It was exactly 10 years ago that I came to Phoenix to meet these guys. Cristian was, how old were you? You were 15?
16.
15 or 16 in January of 05? Yeah. And so I'll just pass it down, and we can talk a little bit about, I think an interesting question would be, where were you at in your life at that point? Like, what were you doing? Where were you coming from? And how did you get involved in this robotics team that these guys had started?
Let's see, where was I in my life? If any of you are familiar with FIRST, this would have been, I believe, around 4th week of FIRST Robotics. You can imagine how busy we were at the time when Josh showed up.
Might be good to stand up.
Oh, okay.
On the back. This is Christian.
Yes, I'm Christian, without an H. But yeah, I mean, actually, my life was pretty great at that moment because I had already applied to ASU. I was on the fast track, so like I got my acceptance letter to ASU School of Engineering about 6 months after the story actually came out. So I was doing great. I mean, I was top 2. I was second in my class. I was getting straight A's. We were doing robotics and all these other competitions. We were still getting, we're still pretty proud of ourselves because we had won the underwater robot competition the year before. So we were still planning out the stuff for the second year we were going to compete, and everything was going great for me at the time.
My name is Lorenzo, and I was not in the same position Christian was. It was different for me. I was a bad student. I had got into many fights. My grades were horrible. I probably had one of the worst GPAs you could think of, and I was on the road to being expelled, which is the opposite of Christian. So, people had mentioned me, the robotics and what it was doing, and that was probably the first year that I joined, or if not, like half of the year later. So, at home, I had different issues. I had we were getting close to a foreclosure, and my mom didn't even know what that was. So, my dad was never there to, be responsible and take care of, big people's business when I'm supposed to be learning in school. So that just brings it up to frustration because I gotta go home and deal with my dad being drunk and all the personal issues that go with it. So it's really frustrating for me. So I believe that going to the robotics team was an escape from that. So getting into that, I heard that the robotics team had tools, so hey, you can build things and bring them. So that's really cool, you can do that. So, and then on top of that, I don't have access to tools at home because we're a low-income family, and I'm one of 5. 3 of us are from here, and me and my older sibling are from Mexico. So it just gives that perspective of, what it is.
Okay, my name is Luis Aranda. When Josh came around, I had already graduated high school. I was actually working 3 jobs at a time. So I was working in the morning and then at night, and then on weekends, working 2 different jobs also. So I was just working pretty much all day, every day. So help out with the house bills and everything else. Before Josh came around, I think after Josh came around and the article came out, I went down to 2 jobs, but it's still working. So like I said, I'm still working now as it is. So I haven't changed my career too much. So I mean, I've always been working in food, catering, or either janitorial work. So it's all really related somehow. I don't know. Anything else?
And I'll just say a little bit about Oscar, who's the 4th member of the team. Oscar is in Montana right now. But at that time, in '04, Oscar was a standout member of Carl Hayden's JROTC program. He dreamt of enlisting in the U.S. Army and had basically devoted his life to that goal and had been voted Officer of the Year at Carl Hayden, and then found out that because he was undocumented, he was not going to be able to enter the U.S. military. That was the summer of his junior year when he found that out, and so starting the beginning of his senior year, he went looking for another team to be a part of, and that's how he came to the Carl Hayden robotics team. I think it would also be, I think, good for people to hear a little bit about your background. You know, in particular, Freddie and Allan. Freddie, you had a background as an immigrant. Can you talk a little bit about how that may have made you more open to what these guys were dealing with?
Before I do that, though, I have to do this. How many people have seen the movie Spare Parts?
Yeah!
If you haven't seen it, you need to go see
Way better looking
it.
than George Lopez.
Everybody
You
keeps
are
saying
way
that.
better. Say it.
It's actually us.
Right. Well, I got the two names, but I promise you.
So, well, I don't know if that's a good. If you want to hear a joke about George Lopez and the two teachers, we'll tell you later. So, I was you'll have to do it later. I was an immigrant when I was about a year old. My parents came from Tehran, Iran. They were both doctors. My mom was a pediatrician and dad was an ophthalmologist. And so I grew up in a pretty high expectations family. I mean, it was never discussed like whether you're going to college or not. It was a done deal. It's like, which college? And at age 19, I became naturalized. My father wasn't around a lot. He was living in different countries at the same time, visiting back and forth a lot. So a lot of my role models happened to be teachers and coaches and things like that. So I guess that's why I ended up in teaching. I thought that's what you were supposed to do or something. But so it was interesting because I was also in high school at the time when the Iranian embassy, or the American embassy in Iran was taken. And so I had to face some of the, I don't know if it's criticisms or punishment or something like that, issues that arose from people trying to pick on me because I was the only Iranian they knew. I got beat up a couple times. So I had, I think what Josh was asking me to say is I had sort of an understanding of what it was like to be an outsider when everyone's looking at you differently because you came from a different place. In my case, you know, I did everything according to the laws of the United States, so I didn't come, you know, across the border or anything, but the issue's still the same. That, you know, whatever reason is, people see you as an outsider and they have certain expectations of you. And so I had a hard time kind of finding my way, and luckily I had very strong parents that, you know, at least the values they instilled in me was, you just put your head down and just go harder. And if you have to be twice as good as someone else to get noticed, then that's what you have to do. And so little by little I made it through that, the issue with the hostages, and when it became less of an issue later. The other issues came up later, but I think a lot of my teachers that I had gave the time I saw her, she says, so when are you going to be a teacher? Like, you guys don't make any money, I'm not going to be a teacher. It's like being a civil servant, you can't do anything. Look at your car, you know, I would point to her. So here I am, and Josh can attest to the car I drive right now, so I guess it worked out that she was right. I eventually saw that I did have the ability to work with kids, and even though I was a kid myself, I knew how to motivate people, so I decided to take the vow of poverty and become a public servant.
Okay, I'm Allan Cameron. I'm the doctor part of Cameron, and we'll talk about that in a moment. I was born and raised in San Francisco, went in the Navy. I was an electronics technician, so you can see a little techie background there. And probably what pertains to this is when I was in the Navy, remember the mid-60s? For those that remember the mid-60s. Or like the old joke goes, if you remember the mid-60s, you weren't there. Wearing the Navy uniform, I'd have beer cans thrown at me. That was a lot of fun. When I got out of the Navy, I let my hair grow long, and you'll see a picture in the book, and I'd walk down the street and have beer cans thrown at me. But it was a different class of people, so it was like, you know, I'm still the same guy. And then Mill Avenue. I went to ASU in the early 70s, and that's when Changing Hands was there. And Perry's Bar was down Mill Avenue for the old timers, and they had nickel beer night one weeknight. And being a poor GI Bill guy, that was a good hangout. Changing Hands and Perry's. I mean, what more does a college kid need? Then I had a teacher that really had a strong influence on me, a philosophy teacher of all things, and suggested I might want to be a teacher because I had kids I worked with and stuff. And that was like a foreign idea to me. Me, a teacher, I had like D's in high school. I was not a good student. But it turned out I did become a teacher. I was then looking for a job with long hair and a beard, and of all places, I was hired in Scottsdale. And that was odd. But I took a class, literally, they were looking for a substitute that would take this class that was down to about 8 fifth graders, and because they had run off all the teachers. I mean, they were attitude. And I took that job. I lasted the first week, and that's when I really found out how to teach, because you could yell at them, but that doesn't work. You could, do whatever you want. And you'll have to read the book to see what we did. But the kids responded, and what I learned there was everyone wants to be the best at something. And if it's going to be the rottenest, worst kids in school, they're not going to let that go, because they're good at that. And so we turned that around. So life goes on. I taught elementary school for a while. I went back to ASU because I was thrilled with computers, and I wound up getting a PhD in elementary education. So when you see the movie and they say you had a PhD in engineering, if we knew engineering, we never would have done this stuff. We went in naive. We were just the two big kids in the class. We didn't know what we were doing either, so we'd have to phone people up. I had an amateur radio club at school. Freddie had an electric car at school. We did do competitions where kids in our particular fields would, compete, and we did pretty good. We both enjoyed challenging the kids after school, because then you have the freedom. You don't have to clean up in 50 minutes because the bell's about to ring. You can go for hours if that's what it takes. Or you can just not meet today because we don't need to. You'd attract the kids that want to be there, not the kids whose counselors told them it'd be a good idea to take that class. So we were really having a good time, although sometimes we didn't go home till 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. The robotics competition, we started with First Robotics, if you're familiar with that, and that's the land robots, and it's really good. And the first year, it was like $5,000 just to play, and then you had to get money for parts, and and it was very expensive, and I was kind of reluctant. And Freddie goes, "But we need a programmer," and I could program, so I'll help you with programming. But once you start, it's like being in the Hells Angels. Once you're in all the way, you're never getting out. So for the first year, we kind of struggled, and we had a robot, and we competed. The second year, we did pretty darn good with that first robotics. The problem is the competition takes part like this time of the year. So what do you do in the fall? Well, it was about this time of year, we come across a thing, made underwater robotics. Oh, look at this. They're looking for teachers that want to go to Santa Barbara in July. They take care of the food, transportation, the hotel room, and they'll show us how to build underwater robotics. What do you think about that? What are you doing in July besides huddling in our air-conditioned houses? So we did that. And part of the deal was that you'd form a team to compete, the following summer. So we felt obligated to do that, but we weren't going to really throw in a lot of resources to do it. I mean, come on, we're just going to go and see what this competition's like, but we'll have the kids throw something together. Make a long story short, we did throw something together. What was different about ours is we didn't know how everyone else built theirs. So we made it up as we went along, and we had some innovations they had never particularly thought about. So we had a far more agile robot. We had for us, a very good robot. We entered in the university category because we knew we were going to lose. And we figured if we beat one college, we're going to brag about that. We beat El Camino Community College. What do you know? We're just high school guys. And so that's how we wound up in this competition. We weren't going to win. We were going just to find out what it was like. But we wanted to have a robot to do it because we were obligated to. And the rest, of course, is no surprise, we won. Our robot came out 4th, but there was more to the competition. The kids had to...
The movie changed it to fourth. In reality, it was third.
Okay, we'll check records on that, but the third or fourth, whatever. But there was also, you had to turn in a written document, a technical document on everything you did and the cost and the parts and the wiring. You get the idea. The kids also had to make a presentation. Now, if you've ever been around a mostly Hispanic high school and you take 4 random kids and put them in front of an all-white male audience that know their stuff, the first thing is we start talking like this, because, today they're pretty polished. Back then, it was public speaking for the first time. It was very nervous. So they got through the presentation. We turned in our document, and there was a poster session. Well, what turned out was we got first place in the written document of all things. We beat MIT in writing. We didn't beat them in the robot. We beat them. And the kids did fantastic in the presentation because they knew what they were talking about. It was their baby they were talking about, and they impressed the judges. The moral of the story, what got us here, standing right here in front of you now, is I wrote a press release about 2 in the morning that we won. It was poorly written, as Josh reminds us quite often, but it worked. Josh wrote a story for Wired magazine, and if you get a chance, read that. It takes a half hour to read. It's very well written. And I know when I first read it, I said, Josh, you wrote this like a movie script. And he went, yeah. And as soon as it was published, or just before it was published, we were getting hits from movie people that wanted to do the movie, Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers and Disney were bidding for it. It was like, oh man. Well, that carried on for a few years and finally fell through. So it looked like the movie was dead, and a young lady said she would write a script for free, just like on spec. Maybe, if somebody picks up the movie and wants to pay her for her script, that'd be great. She wrote it, and that's the script for Spare Parts. And if you watch the documentary Underwater Dreams, which is also on us, the moral of the story is, it was the written word that got us here. It was fantastic storytellers. Our story, although we'll sit here and go, thank you, thank you, thank you, there's hundreds of thousands of teachers doing the same thing every day. I mean, what we did really wasn't that unusual. We just had the coverage.
Well, there's a reason I dedicated the book to Allan and Freddie. There's a second part, though, and I won't remember it exactly, so I think I'll just read it. The dedication of the book is to Allan Cameron and Freddie Lajvardi and America's teachers, all of whom are on the front lines of the American dream. We can either go to Q&A, or the other thing that I might think you guys might be interested in is hearing a little bit about what everybody's doing now and what their hopes and dreams are. So, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing, and the two of these guys have something exciting to talk about, which I'll let them discuss.
So instead of going into engineering and all that good stuff, I didn't go into it because I'm not. I'm very smart, but I could do better in other careers. So I went into cooking, and in the movie you guys see that I'm like cutting some vegetables. I think that was like a hint that I'm a chef. Well, I am, and
a block away.
Yeah, a block away right here at St. Francis. Just to clarify, I'm just a line cook there. I'm a chef in my restaurant. So, anyways, even though it's food, it's still engineering. It's still a gastronomy, composing of some sort to create something delicious, and you get to eat it at the end. For 6 years, Luis and I have been catering, and him and I have been talking for the longest time about building our business. And well, our goal is to raise $50,000. And honestly, like I've never, dreamt of anything bigger than a food bus. So I think I'm gonna do a food truck, but it's gonna be a food bus. We're gonna tear up a school bus, put a kitchen in there, and cater for the masses, or just go to Food Truck Fridays, which is pretty good too. And it'll be, the concept is like really good, authentic Mexican food, and so.
What are you gonna name it?
Stinky's Food Bus, because
Some people might get the wrong idea.
well, so we're changing the way people think of stinky, Oh, it's not gonna be that good, but we're gonna change that. So that's it, and we have a website. It's lorenzosdream.com, and you can help us there.
I guess I'm Luis Aranda again. Me and Lorenzo have been, like he said, I've been working for a while with him again during the catering, doing different things for ADAC, different things for other organizations and stuff. I mean, this is what I don't think we ever hoped we'd be doing this at this young of our time. But the website's with lorenzosdream.com. So you guys please donate things and share.
I'm still Cristian Arcega. My big dream, like you heard all the positive stuff I had when I was in high school, right, when the story came out. What happened after that was Proposition 300, if any of you are familiar with that. So I got hit by that 1 year into my engineering degree at ASU, so my scholarship got revoked. It was already too late to apply anywhere out of state or to really find any funds, because back then it was really hard for any undocumented student to just come out and say I'm undocumented and I need to go to college, because you're always worried about our pirate just picking you up because he felt like it. And so my scholarship got revoked, and I've been going to community college since then, on and off. I actually went to trade school at Maricopa Skills Center, if any of you are familiar with that. So I'm a CNC machinist. And I couldn't find any work after that because I didn't have experience, and I also lacked legal work permits, but that's still in my back pocket. And now I'm doing this crowdfunding project through collegedream.help, so I can go back to college this fall, still for engineering. I still want to get that engineering degree, and I want to use that electrical engineering degree to start my own consumer electronics company based out of Phoenix.
I'll say a little bit about Oscar. Oscar had, as many of you probably know, a very dramatic experience after high school, which involved self-deporting himself to Mexico, being banned from the United States for 10 years, having the ban overturned after about a year, entering the US military, finally being deployed to Afghanistan. Something that I went and saw him last January when he came back from Afghanistan. There's a little bit of a side note, but when his unit was sent back to the US, instead of sending them somewhere sunny and warm like Florida, how about Puerto Rico? They sent them to Alaska in the middle of winter. I mean, it was a really bad decision that led to a lot of bad outcomes for his unit. And I think he's, in fact, still struggling with some of those bad outcomes. Those deaths haunt him. He said that to me last week. But he has now landed on his feet in Montana, and he's an engineer at BNSF, the training. And he is a U.S. citizen. Hopes and dreams. What do you hope and dream about?
It's gonna work for me.
You need a supervisor? Just as a little side note, when I found out that Jamie Lee Curtis and Marissa Tomei were both going to be doing this movie, I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be great if I could get a picture with Marissa Tomei on one side and Jamie Lee Curtis on the other, both kissing me on the cheek? Because I could take that picture and then after that I could die, because what else is there left? What is there left to do? So I actually got that opportunity, and So now I have no more aspirations. No, I'm approaching a time when I have the option of retiring. I don't know for sure if that's what I want to do, but the state of public education is very frustrating, and it's to be honest, it's driving me out. And I think just a lot of things are going in the wrong direction, and I don't have a big enough platform to get people to listen to me. And I'm sure Allan can echo things. So I'm jealous that he's retired and gets to do all these things, and I'm looking forward to that being a possibility in the next 2 to 3 years. But I may be interested in doing something else in education, just maybe being in a better position where I can maybe reverse some of the things that I see are happening. I think we're too preoccupied with the standardized test and trying to make everyone a clone of each other. The thing that I really see that frustrates me is none of these educational reforms or any of these things that you hear about, nothing addresses inspiring and motivating the kids and the teachers. And I think if you do that, all the rest of this stuff will happen if you have kids wanting to go to school and wanting to do things. But the way it is now, it's more like they're cramming everything down our throats. And so I guess a dream would be is if I had the ability to do something about it, and I have a big enough platform, maybe I can be in a position to do that. So who knows? We'll have to wait and see what happens.
I'm retired. Actually, I am retired. And wave your hand, Deb. My wife, Deb. We do a lot of cross-country bicycling. If you read the book, Deb plays a big role in that. Only for one page, but a fantastic role. She had a big impact on Oscar's life. I do a lot of cross-country bicycling. We just take off and go for a month or two and just ride bicycles. It's kind of like backpacking, but with bicycles. And we do amateur radio, and I have a robotics club, like you have a robotics club, and this is robotics season. And I'm retired, and I keep waiting, like, when do I not have appointments? It's killing me. We like to take off for a while, but
Do you miss teaching?
Huh?
Do you miss teaching?
Sometimes I miss teaching. I miss the kids, I really do. I don't miss getting to work at 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't miss doing the grades, attendance, and all of that. When you ask questions, you can talk about education, you can talk about how do you inspire kids like these kids. Ask us how come there's no girls on the team. Come on, what's going on here? What else are good topics that you like? Don't ask us what George Lopez